Listen to me real close for a minute. I tell you something that ain't just another story. This right here is about your money, your jobs, your future, and the big all-world stage we're living on right now. Steve's silent stare, adjust suit jacket. Hold on now. You gotta be kidding me if you think this is business as usual between the U.S. and India. Cause what started as a trade spat-dun turned into a full-on thunderstorm, shaking the foundations of two nations with billions of people tied up in the mix. Now look at me, I'm talking about a 50% tariff wall that the United States slapped on Indian goods. 50%. That ain't some tiny oopsie tax that is middle finger big on trade, commerce, and global confidence. Steve's silent stare again. You ever try sell lemonade at the church potluck, and then the host walks up and says, "Nah, you gotta give me half your profits." That's what this feels like, and you know who's paying that price. Folks like you and me, consumers on both sides of the world, workers who depend on exports and supply chains, and companies trying to do honest business. Meantime, I tell you something else, and look, this isn't just me talking. This is what the papers and the world leaders are hashing out. These reciprocal trade war moves are hitting millions of jobs, especially in sectors like textiles, gems, leather, seafood industries that send their ware straight into U.S. markets, and now they face hacking costs that are gonna make their prices skyrocket. You think a neighbor borrowing your lawnmower and never bringing it back is bad. Try borrow in America's marketplace and have an Uncle Sam suddenly charge you 50% at the gate. News 24, but wait, it gets thicker. Now, it ain't just goods and exports. Oh no, sir. We got H-1B visas that special pass millions of bright Indian IT professionals used to work in the U.S. slapped with a $100,000 fee. You heard me right, $100,000 just to enter the queue. That's higher than a church steeple. Steve's silent stare adjusts jacket again. That policy alone might reshape talent pipelines, drain opportunity, and leave startups scratch in their heads trying to figure out how to keep global technologists connected with Silicon Valley. The times of India, and don't get me started on geopolitics, oh no. We got India out here mackin' what folks are calling the Chinese checkers move circling closer to China and Russia like relatives at a family reunion who keep whispering to each other while you're trying to talk. That pivot ain't happening in a vacuum. It's happening because of the squeeze from Washington and the sit down dance India's trying to do with Moscow and Beijing. Meanwhile, the situation with Pakistan, a ceasefire that was claimed by President Trump as brokered by the U.S., has been hotly debated and controversial between Delhi and Islamabad, adding fuel to this diplomatic fire. Mint now, when you put all this together, tariffs, visas, alliances, and diplomatic tension, it's like your wild uncle at the reunion brought politics to Thanksgiving dinner, and now folks won't even pass the mashed potatoes. Steve leans forward, silent stare. This ain't some sleepy back page kinda news. This is your economic real world geopolitical turf war happening right now as we speak that affects everything from your job to your grocery price to the future direction of the global economy. So I want you to settle in, buckle up, and pay attention to this first part real careful, because in part 2, we're gonna get into the why behind these decisions, not just the headlines, and break it down like a Sunday roast at Grandma's house, so you really understand what's driving each of these moves and why you should care. Steve crosses arms, intense gaze. Don't go nowhere, we just getting started. All right now, look at me. Steve pauses, straightens the suit. Part 2, this is where we stop reacting and start understanding. 'Cause grown folks don't just yell at the TV, grown folks ask why. I tell you something, trade wars don't start because of feelings, they start because of leverage, money, markets, power. And right now, the United States and India are locked in one of those quiet, but dangerous standoffs where everybody's smiling in public and swinging elbows under the table. Let's talk about these 50% U.S. tariffs on Indian goods. Now, why would America do that to a country it's been calling a strategic partner for years? Simple. Washington says India's tariffs on American products, agriculture, medical devices, tech components have been unfair for a long time. This is that neighbor who says, "You been eating my groceries for free, now I'm changing the locks." The Trump administration framed this as reciprocity. You tax me, I tax you harder. Steve gives the stare. Long one, but here's the part folks miss. These tariffs ain't just about trade deficits, they're about control of supply chains. The U.S. wants manufacturing back home or at least out of countries that don't fully align with its rules. India, meanwhile, wants to protect its farmers, its small manufacturers, and its domestic industries. That's why disputes over genetically modified crops blew up again. The U.S. pushes GM soy, corn, and cotton as efficient and science-backed. India says, hold on now, we got 700 million people tied to agriculture, and we ain't risking their livelihoods. That disagreement alone has stalled multiple trade understandings. Now slide over to energy, cause energy is the quiet boss in geopolitics. India has been buying discounted Russian oil even while the U.S. is sanctioning Moscow. Why? Because India's got 4 billion people to keep the lights on for. Cheap oil keeps inflation down, keeps transport moving, keeps food prices stable. The U.S. says that undercuts our pressure on Russia. India says that keeps my economy breathing. That's not ideology, that's survival math. And while all that's going on, the H-1B visa fee shock lands like somebody flipped the dinner table. A 6-figure cost attached to hiring skilled foreign workers isn't accidental. That's America saying, if you want access to our tech ecosystem, it's gonna cost you big. Silicon Valley built itself on global talent, and a massive chunk of that talent comes from India. So when those fees rise, startups panic, tech giants restructure, and thousands of skilled professionals reconsider where they build their lives. That's not immigration policy alone, that's economic signaling. Now, watch India's response. This is where that Chinese checkers of move comes in. India doesn't abandon the U.S., but it rebalances. More trade talks with China, more defense coordination with Russia. More payments in non-dollar currencies, not because India trusts everyone, but because no country wants to be cornered. This is like when you arguing with one cousin, so you go sit next to another one not because they perfect, but because you need options. Steve nods slowly. And then there's the India-Pakistan ceasefire drama. President Trump publicly claimed U.S. credit for easing tensions, and India pushed back hard, saying it was bilateral, no outside referee needed. Why does that matter? Because sovereignty is a sensitive nerve. India doesn't want Washington playing mediator in South Asia. Pakistan doesn't mind it. The U.S. likes leverage. That triangle stays tense, and every comment adds friction to already strained diplomacy. So when you zoom out, you see the real picture. This ain't chaos, it's repositioning. America tightening access, India diversifying alliances, everybody preparing for a world where trust is thin, supply chains are political, and power is transactional. Steve folds his hands, slow inhale, And in part 3, we're gonna talk about what comes next, who wins, who pays, and what this means for regular folks just trying to work, raise families, and stay ahead of the storm. Don't blink. All right now. Come on in close. Steve pauses, looks straight down the lens, adjusts the suit one last time. This is part 3, and this is where we stop talking about governments and start talking about you. Because here's the real talk nobody wants to say out loud. When giants argue, regular people feel it first. Always have, always will. Trade wars don't knock on the door of billionaires, they kick in the kitchen door of working families. Let me break it down Steve Harvey style. When tariffs go up, prices don't stay put. That phone case costs more. That laptop costs more. That imported medicine, machinery, or spare part costs more. And companies don't eat those costs out of kindness. They pass them right on down the line like a bad plate at a church potluck. Steve gives the stare, you know the one. Somebody's gonna pay, and 9 times out of 10, it ain't the politicians. Now in India, workers in export, heavy industries start feel in the squeeze, orders slow, factories cut shifts, families tighten budgets in the U.S., companies that relied on Indian supply chains scramble to find alternatives often more expensive, often less reliable. This ain't nationalism, this is economic whiplash. And that H-1B situation, let me tell you something. When skilled people stop moving freely, innovation slows down, startups don't launch, research teams shrink. Projects get delayed. That don't just hurt immigrants, that hurts competitiveness. America didn't become America by closing the door on talent. India didn't build its tech muscle by staying local. Progress happens when smart people collide, not when walls go up. Now look at India's pivot, China, Russia, new trade routes, new payment systems. Some folks say that's dangerous. Others say that's necessary. I say this. A country with options sleeps better at night. India is hedging, not marrying. Same way you keep a savings account even if you love your job. Because trust in global politics is temporary, but national interest is forever. And the India-Pakistan tension. That's the reminder nobody likes. Peace talks are fragile, egos are real, and one wrong sentence can undo months of quiet diplomacy. When big leaders speak, their words echo. That's why every claim, every credit, every press statement matters. This ain't reality TV, but the consequences are realer than real. So what's next? More negotiations, more pressure, more deals behind closed doors. Possibly cooler heads, possibly sharper elbows. But one thing is certain, the world is shifting from cooperation to calculation. Every country asking, what's in it for me, before they ask, what's fair. Now here's my Steve Harvey motivation for you, and I need you to hear this. You can't control tariffs. You can't control summits. You can't control presidents talking off script. But you can stay informed. You can understand how global moves hit your wallet, your job, your education, your kids' future. You can vote smart, invest smart, and demand better answers from leaders who claim to speak for you. Because in times like this, ignorance is expensive. Steve steps back, nods slowly. The world ain't fallen apart, it's rearranging itself. And the people who survive the rearrangement ain't the loudest. They're the most prepared. So if you want clarity instead of noise, facts instead of fear, and straight talk without the spin, you already know what to do. I'll see you in the next one. Look at me. Stay ready.